So now that we spent some time talking about sampling methods, let's talk about bias. So you can see here a definition of bias. It says it favors certain outcomes. So bias could be for or against you. Bias is anything that causes the data to be wrong, and it can be intentional or unintentional. And there's three places where bias comes from. That's researchers, the respondent, and sampling method. So we're going to talk about bias, the sampling method, and one quick thing about the respondent. As far as researchers goes, you should always do your best to be objective, of course, and reduce bias. And right over here you'll see it says bad data PWC. PWC means proceed with caution. So we're not saying that it's wrong. We're just saying, hey, we don't know if this data is good or bad. So until we know if it's good or bad, we're going to proceed with caution. So PWC is proceed with caution. And anytime we are aware of some bias, we're going to tell people there's a bias and let's proceed with caution. We'll go on and analyze our data, but let's just be careful for a second. I'll give you a second to copy this down. The first type of error that we're going to talk about is voluntary response. This is when people choose to respond, and the problem is it's usually only people with very strong opinions. So while you write this down, I'll pause for a second, and then I'll go on to an example in a moment. An example of voluntary response is a magazine asks people to write in to ask if they think we should switch to electric vehicles. Well, asking somebody to write in either an email or an actual letter, that's asking people to do an awful lot. And unless they really want to do something, they're simply not going to take the time or effort to write in when they could sit on the couch and drool a little bit. Undercoverage. Undercoverage occurs when some groups of the population are left out of the sampling process. And my example for this is trying to count the number of people in, say, Little Rock. We could miss homeless people. That'd be an example of undercoverage. We're attempting to count people, but we're unable to do so for whatever reason. Another type of bias comes as a result of non-response. This occurs when an individual chosen for the sample can't be contacted or refuses to cooperate. And I have a great example for this one. My example is telephone surveys. 70% non-response rate. 70%. That means that on average, if you call 10 people, 7 of them will not respond. And this can be a problem because the error may occur when you try to figure out who would respond to your polls. And is it going to be someone who's more affluent, somebody less affluent? Is it going to be male or female? Whatever it is, it can skew your results and create bias. The next type of bias we're going to learn about is response bias. This occurs when the behavior of the respondent or interviewer causes bias in the sample. And these are just wrong answers. And I have a quick example for this one as well. My example here is when people give the wrong answer because it's funny. Sometimes people are taking a survey and they'll change their gender, or they'll be 16 years old and they'll say they're 35 because they think it's funny. Okay, that was a quick run down on some types of bias that you may encounter as a result of sampling methods.